אנחנו מוצאים את הפורום זרה שמשון.
האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה? מה? כן.
Erev Tov, good evening, everyone. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parshas Tetzei, and we're going to take a look at Os Hey, section number 5. Before we get into the words of the Zera Shimshon, let's take a look at two psukim from the Parsha. This is Perek Chaf Beis, Sefer Devarim Perek Chaf Beis, psukim Vav and Zion, talking about a very well-known mitzvah. You're going to recognize it as soon as I start. Ki yikore kan sipor lefanecha, when there will happen before you the nest of a bird, baderech, on the way, b'chol eitz, in any tree, o al haaretz, or on the ground, efrochim o veitzim, whether there are fledglings, baby birds in the nest, or eggs in the nest, v'ha'em rovetzes al ha'efrochim, and the mother bird is hovering over the baby birds, o al ha'beitzim, or she's sitting on the eggs, lo sikach ha'em al habonim, do not take the mother along with the baby birds or the eggs. That's a famous mitzvah. We're not allowed to take the mother bird when we come and take the eggs or the baby birds. Next pasuk, shaleach tishalach es ha'em, send away the mother bird, ve'es habonim tikach loch, and then you can take the babies, again, either the baby birds, the efrochim, or the beitzim, or the eggs. But you can't take the mother. You have to send the mother bird away. Leman yitav loch, in order that it should be good for you. Ve'ha'arachta yomim, and your days will be lengthened. So there's a wonderful sachar, a wonderful reward for this mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. It's going to be good for you, and you're going to have long life. That's what we always pray for, a healthy, good life, and that's the reward for sending away the mother bird. So now let's take a look at the Zera Shimshon. Hold 1 second. It's not on my screen for some reason. Give me 1 second. Okay, Os Hey, section number 5, the Zera Shimshon says, Chulin Perek Yud Beis. If we look in Meseches Chulin in the 12th chapter, it's actually a Mishnah that he's quoting from. It says, Lo yitol adam aim al habonim. A person should not take the mother bird with the baby birds, afilu letaher es hamitzora, even for the purpose of doing the mitzvah of purifying a person with tsaras. We know from sefer Vayikra, when it talks about a person who gets tsaras, a skin ailment, that they can be purified through a process that involves a bird. And so let's say you see the bird that you need for that process and you want to use it, you want to take it to do the mitzvah of helping the purification process for the mitzvah. If that's what you want to do, you can't do it if that bird is a mother bird with its baby birds or with its eggs. You're not allowed to take the mother bird, even to do the mitzvah of purifying the mitzvah, the person with tsaras. Then the Mishnah continues, Uma I mitzvah kala shehi be'isar, and what is true about a simple or easy mitzvah that costs only an isar. An isar was a small amount of money, a small coin, and the baby bird, it would cost to buy a baby bird would be an isar, this amount of money, this coin. In other words, that's all you're going to need to spend if you don't take the mother bird because she's sitting on a nest. And the Torah says your reward for simply passing up the mother bird and going out to buy a bird from the store for a little coin, an inexpensive bird for the purification process, if you do that, it's going to be good for you and you're going to have a long life. Kal v'chomer, how much more is this true? Al mitzvos chamuros shebatorah, on the serious, very hard and difficult to accomplish mitzvos in the Torah. So that's a quote from a Mishnah in Maseches Chulin. Let's just recap briefly. So the Mishnah teaches us that a kal v'chomer, that if a person receives a great reward of long and good healthy days from doing the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, which is easy to do and has, even if you want to call it an expense, you want to say there's an expense involved because now you have to go buy a bird, for example, to go do a purification process for a mitzvah. That's a tiny expense. So if you receive this great reward for doing that mitzvah of sending away the mother bird and not using it for the purification process, then how much more so when you have other mitzvos which are so difficult and hard to accomplish and perhaps very expensive and costly to accomplish? How much more so are you going to receive the reward of long, good years? Zera Shimshon continues, Yesh ledaktek, we need to examine, we need to analyze b'may di'amrin and b'Yerushalmi depeya, what the Gemara, the Talmud Yerushalmi says on Maseches Peah. And here comes a quote from the Yerushalmi. Shokal hakosuv hakala shebakalos. The Torah made an equivalency. The Torah equated the easiest of easy mitzvos, dahainu shiluach hakein, which is sending away the mother bird from the nest, easy mitzvah to do, kachamura shebachamuros, with one of the most difficult mitzvos to do, dahainu kibud av va'em, which is properly honoring one's mother and one's father. To appropriately fulfill the mitzvah of kibud av va'em is a very difficult mitzvah to do, and the Gemara goes through many examples of how hard it is to really, truly accomplish that mitzvah. And we'll see an example a little later in this piece, but that's a very hard mitzvah to do. And yet, that mitzvah is equated with the mitzvah of shiluach hakein, which is an easy mitzvah. You just don't take the mother bird, you shoo it away. What could be easier? With one flick of your hand, you shoo away the mother bird. Hadohu dichsiv, and this is what is meant by the pasuk in Mishlei, Orach Chaim Pentifales, the way of life, lest you try and weigh it, lest you try and evaluate it. The pasuk in Mishlei teaches us that we should not try to evaluate and weigh the mitzvos that are the Jewish way of life, that are part and parcel, the commandments that are part and parcel of the Jewish way of life, the Orach Chaim of the Torah, the Jewish way of life, the Torah way of life. Don't try and evaluate the mitzvos because we don't know which one is really considered something more serious to Hashem or something that's more considered more lenient or more easy to Hashem. Shekol ha-mitzvos matan sechoron arichas yamin. And the Yerushalmi concludes, all mitzvos receive the reward of a lengthening of one's days, of long life. It's not just restricted to shiluach hakein and kibud av va'em. It applies, it's one of the rewards for all of the mitzvos that a person does. That's a quote from the Yerushalmi. So now the Zera Shimshon is going to pose two questions. Did tarte lamoli, why did the Yerushalmi need two of cases to try and bring about this point that receiving long life is a reward for other mitzvos, not just shiluach hakan, it applies to other mitzvos. Why did the Yerushalmi feel the need to bring both the example of shiluach hakein and kibud av va'em? V'ha, and behold, mi shiluach hakein lechuda, from the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird by itself, ika kal v'chomer. There is a kal v'chomer that one can use, and that's a reference to the Mishnah in Maseches Chulin, which learned that the reward for mitzvos that the reward of a long life applies to other mitzvos. And we learn that right from shiluach hakein itself. We don't seem to need, the Mishnah and Chulin didn't seem to need to use both shiluach hakein and kibud av va'em. It used just shiluach hakein. Ve'adarabba, and the opposite is true, the Zera Shimshon says, meaning by using the two mitzvos of Shiluach HaKain and Kibbud Av V'Eim, you actually now have a problem. Ho'il shenichtavu shnayim, since the reward of long days was written regarding both mitzvos, ein lemeidin l'shar mitzvos. Perhaps you're now not allowed to learn it out to other mitzvos and extend it to other mitzvos. Because we have a rule which says that if something is written by two different mitzvos, ke'echad, as one, meaning the same point is made by two different mitzvos, and it seems like it's unnecessary. In other words, it seems like all the Torah had to do is write it for one mitzvah, not both, and the Torah wrote it for two different mitzvos, ein melamdin, then you can't learn it to other mitzvos. You can only apply it to the two mitzvos where it was written. So now we really have to make sure we understand the Zera Shimshon's two questions, especially that second one, which is a little bit complicated, right? So the Zera Shimshon's first question is a very straightforward question. He opened his piece with a Mishnah in Maseches Chulin in which it said we can learn from the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain, of sending away the mother bird, we can learn that all other more difficult mitzvos receive the reward of a long life also. So if the Mishnah in Chulin did that, how come the Gemara in Yerushalmi in Maseches Peah, felt like it had to bring in two mitzvos, Shiluach HaKain and Kibbud Av V'Eim, to make the point that other mitzvos can also get the reward of a long life of Arichas Yomim? That's his first question. His second question is, it would seem to be counterproductive to bring in two mitzvos, because we have a rule, which is that if the Torah states a certain fact, a certain point regarding two different subjects, and it would seem that it didn't need to mention it in both places, then you have to assume it had a reason to mention it by those two places, and you can't extend it to any other places. So the Yerushalmi is kind of shooting itself in the foot, according to the Zera Shimshon, his question. The Yerushalmi is messing things up by bringing in two sources as opposed to just using the one source of Shiluach HaKain, of sending away the mother bird, which is the path that the Mishnah in Maseches Chulin took. Just bring the one source of Shiluach HaKain. Don't bring the two sources of Shiluach HaKain and Kibbud Av V'Eim, because then you can cause problems for yourself. Those are the two questions of the Zera Shimshon. Let's begin to read his answer. V'yesh lomar, we can say, shebe'emes lo havele lichtov hamatan sachar ela b'shiluach HaKain. In truth, all the Torah needed to do was write the reward one time, the reward of a lengthening of days, one time regarding the sending away of the mother bird. Shehi kala, because it is a simple mitzvah to do. The kal v'chomer l'shar mitzvos, and we can use the principle, the logical principle of kal v'chomer, to apply it to other mitzvos. If we get long days for doing a simple, easy mitzvah that's also extremely inexpensive, almost cost-free, then how come? Then we can learn out that other mitzvos, which are harder to do, more complicated to do, more difficult to do, and might even cost more money to do. Then certainly you get the reward of a long life. That's the Zera Shimshon says that's your starting point. That's a fundamental point, and that's good. If the reward of long life had in fact only been written by the sending away of the mother bird, Hayisi Omer, I would have said Kal v'chomer. I would have made a Kal v'chomer Kibbud Av V'Eim diyesh bechisaron kis godol yoser mishiluach HaKain. I would have been able to learn out a Kal v'chomer and say Kibbud Av V'Eim requires a person to spend a lot of money. Correctly honoring one's parents can become very expensive. Doha mitzvahs kibbud hu ad sheyitol arnaki v'yizrakenu layam ki de'isa b'kedushin. We learn in a Gemara in Kedushin that talks about the mitzvah of Kibbud Av V'Eim, that even if one's parent takes his wallet or takes a purse that belongs to the daughter or a son's wallet and throws it overboard into the ocean while they're taking a trip, one cannot at all say a word of criticism. One cannot become angry. So a parent, honoring a parent correctly can even cost the person all the money that he or she has with him or her. And certainly if it reaches the point when a child has to support the parents, they have to do so, as the Zera Shimshon will talk later, to the nth degree, to a full extent. So that's a hard mitzvah to do and an expensive mitzvah to do. And this would have included all other mitzvos that involve an expenditure of money. So the Zera Shimshon is saying, if the Torah had in fact only written the reward of long life by the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird of Shiluach HaKain, we could have learned out from that to all other mitzvos, including kibbud av v'em, certainly that involve an expenditure of money. Aval ha-mitzvos deleis behu chisaron kis, but regarding mitzvos in which money, they have nothing to do with money. There are many mitzvos that have no connection to any kind of expenditure. Then we couldn't learn them out. The ikala mifrach, because you could ask in that case, if you did try to learn it out from Shiluach HaKain, ma l'Shiluach HaKain sheyesh bo kitzas chisaron kis. We would say, wait a minute, you're trying to learn something out from Shiluach HaKain, but that has a little bit of a cost. As we said, when you shoo away the mother bird, and now you need to go buy one from the store, that's going to cost you a little bit of money. So, but it does have some cost. It does have some financial inconvenience, you might say, some financial ramification. So then we cannot learn a kal v'chomer from Shiluach HaKain to any mitzvah that doesn't involve a loss of money at all, because the kal v'chomer won't work, and therefore it really would not be sufficient. Let's continue. Alternatively, the Zera Shimshon says, if the Torah had written about the reward of long life regarding only the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, meaning it had not written in the case of Shiluach HaKain, it had not written it about the mitzvah of the mother bird, it had only written this reward of long life regarding honoring one's parents, Hayisi omer mikoach tafasta muat tafasta, I would have said, based on the principle of grab a little bit and you'll successfully be grabbing, meaning don't stretch things too far, don't extend rules too far, just do things in moderation, and you'll see what he means. Shezeh hasachar godol, this great reward of a long and healthy life, hainu dafka kishiyeshbo bekibud chesron kis godol. It only applies to mitzvos where there is a great expenditure of money, just like kibbud av v'em. That's the only extension you could make. And you would not have been able to apply the reward, to extend the reward of a long life to mitzvos like Shiluach HaKain, which either have no expense involved or only a little expense involved. And other mitzvos similar to that, you would not have been able to learn out and apply the sachar, the reward of a long life. Umishum hachi itztarichu tarvayu. Because of this, the Zera Shimshon says the Torah needed to state and articulate the reward of a long life regarding both the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain, of sending away the mother bird, and the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, of honoring one's parents. Shaharei hakibud hecha deispe chisaron kis, because the mitzvah of kibbud av v'em, where there is a loss of money, anu lomdim oso mikal v'chomer de Shiluach HaKain, we could have learned that from a kal v'chomer, from the case of Shiluach HaKain, of sending away the mother bird. Umi de kasve gabe kibud, and then from the fact that the Torah wrote the reward of long life regarding kibbud av v'em, even though we would have been able to learn it out from a kal v'chomer from Shiluach HaKain, shma mino de oso le'oroye, then we learn from this that it's coming to teach us something more. De'af b'makom deleis bechesron kis, even in cases where there is not a loss of money, maton sechora arichus yamim, the reward is still a reward of long life. Umizeh onum lomdim af l'shar mitzvos, and from here we can learn to apply that same reward to other mitzvos. Nimsa shekol ha-mitzvot shavos hein. That we find at the end of this process of reasoning that the Zera Shimshon just went through with us, that all the mitzvos are equal, and that is in the regard that the reward for doing all the mitzvos, each and every one of the mitzvos, is arichas yomim, is a long life, not limited to shiluach hakein and kibbut av ve'em. Now let's pause for a moment, because it's quite possible that the Zera Shimshon might have making a quick turn there and lost us a little bit. So just to explain that last point that he made clearly again, the Zera Shimshon is saying that kibbut av ve'em involves a big expenditure of money, or at least potentially could involve a tremendous outlay of money in order to properly take care of and support one's parents if they need that kind of support. And so the Zera Shimshon says, but the Zera Shimshon says the Torah really could have, we could have just stated the reward of a long life by shiluach hakan, which involves almost no expenditure of money, and we would have used a kal v'chomer to extend it to kibbut av ve'em. But the fact that the Torah didn't do that, and it went and it's restated the reward of kibbut av ve'em, it restated the reward of long life of arichas yomim regarding kibbut av ve'em, that teaches us the following thought process in the Zera Shimshon's ideas. It teaches us that it didn't need to say it, but it said, the Torah said it anyway. So you see it applies even to other cases where there's not an expenditure of money. So by having the Torah state the reward of long life, both by shiluach hakein and by kibbut av ve'em, ultimately results in us expanding and extending the idea of that reward of long life to all mitzvos, which was, the Zera Shimshon says, was the goal that the Torah wanted to accomplish from the beginning. Continuing, v'adayin tzorech iyon. We still need to do a little bit more investigation. Lama sama hatana. Why did the Tana of the Mishnah connect his kal v'chomer zeh, this kal v'chomer, al hadin shelo yitol eim al habonim afilu l'taher es hamitzora? Why all the way back in the first Mishnah that the Zera Shimshon quoted, which is the Mishnah in Maseches Chulin that we started with, did the Tana, the author of the Mishnah, say you can't take a mother bird even to use it in the process of purifying a mitzora? Why did it make that connection? Dema inyan zeh lazeh. What connection is there between the mitzvah of not taking the mother bird and shooing it away and the mitzvah of purifying a mitzora? What is the possible connection between those two things that the Tana went out of his way to say you can't take a mother bird even to use it in that ceremony? The Yesh Lomar, the Zera Shimshon says we can say shekavonas hatana hi lahashmiyenu. The intent of the Tana, the author of the Mishnah, was to teach us she'enonu yodim tivon ve'erkon shel hamitzvos. It was to teach us that we do not know the value and the weight of the mitzvos. Shelif amim niros kalos mitzad atzmon. Sometimes a mitzvah on its own intrinsically seems like it's simple and light. It doesn't have much complication, much difficulty, or much significance to it. Ve'hein chamuros mitzad acher. But that same simple seeming mitzvah can have something strict and a stringency about it from a different perspective. Shaharei, and now here comes an example. Shiluach hakein shehi be'isar. The mitzvah of shooing away the mother bird, which doesn't involve an expense, or certainly only a little expense, nires kala. It seems like a simple and light mitzvah. Va'af al pichein, nevertheless, lo yitol afilu l'taher es hamitzora, shehi mitzvah chamura. Nevertheless, you can't underestimate the mitzvah of shooing away the mother bird, because the Mishnah is teaching us, even if you need that bird to use for a very serious mitzvah of purifying a mitzora, a person with saras, which is a serious and important, significant act. It's something that needs to happen, and the sooner it happens, the better. It has a big consequence. It's very consequential to be able to be metaher a mitzora, to purify a mitzora, so he or she can return to normal life. Nonetheless, the Tana says you can't take the bird. You have to shoo it away, even though you want to use it to accomplish and fulfill a very important mitzvah. Now the Zera Shimshon continues. Why is purifying a mitzorah so important? Laso shalom bein ish leishto, because purifying a mitzorah will bring peace and harmony back to a couple. When a person's a mitzorah, he or she is not allowed to be with his or her spouse. So you now have a man or a woman with tzaras who is separated from the spouse, and they can come back together only through the purification process that requires the bird. Nonetheless, you can't take the bird if the bird is sitting on the nest. Ubitul pirya v'rivia, and this also results in a nullification of the mitzvah of having children. If a husband and wife can't be together and have to be separated, then obviously there's no chance of them fulfilling the mitzvah of procreation. V'ayin b'tosus yontif sof chulin. See more about this in the commentary of the Tosus Yontif. Kal v'chomer al mitzvot sheniros chamuros mitzad atzmon. So kal v'chomer from the mitzvah of shiluach hakein, which seems like such a simple mitzvah in and of itself, to other mitzvahs which in and of themselves seem much more serious, complicated, and significant. And that's a kal v'chomer, that's a very strong kal v'chomer, because we see by shiluach hakein itself, the Zera Shimshon has just demonstrated to us, it itself is a very significant mitzvah, and even holds its own up against the mitzvah of purifying a mitzorah, which has very important ramifications, as he just showed. And so too the fact that the Gemara Yerushalmi equated the mitzvah, the light mitzvah of shiluach hakein, with the heavy mitzvah of kibbud av v'eim, kach mashma'o. This is what it was teaching us. The shiluach hakein shehi be'isar hi kala. Shiluach hakein, which has a very small financial cost, hi kala, it's considered a light mitzvah. The ode and more, and another reason it's a light mitzvah, shahalav shelo nitak la'aseh, the prohibition of not taking the mother bird can be rectified by a positive mitzvah. Meaning, let's say a person sees the mother bird and can't resist and grabs the mother bird. Well, they just violated a mitzvah in the Torah, which was don't take the mother bird. But now they have the mother bird. No problem. All they have to do is release it. You just simply release the bird, and you have rectified the mistake you made and the transgression you made by taking the mother bird to begin with. The ein bo malchus. And because it's a negative prohibition that can be simply rectified by doing a positive act, ein bo malchus. There's no punishment of malchus, of lashes, for transgressing that mitzvah in the time, of course, of the Sanhedrin and the Beis HaMikdash. No punishment was applicable. All the person had to do who violated this mitzvah was release the bird. The zohi kala shebakalos, and this is what the Yerushalmi meant when it said it's the lightest of light mitzvos. The chamura shebachamuros hainu mitzvahs kibud, and the heaviest of heavy mitzvahs is the mitzvah of honoring one's parents. The it kush kivodom lichvod hamakom, because the honoring of one's parents is compared to the honoring of Hashem, the odiv mineh, and in certain ways it's even stronger than honoring Hashem. An amazing concept, as the Zera Shimshon is going to continue. Kimoshe kosu atosus beperakama de kiddushin daf lamed aleph amud aleph, as Tosfos explains. This is Tosfos commentary on the Gemara in Maseches Kiddushin Dibur Amaschil Kabedes Hashem Ehonecha. The piece in Tosfos begins with those words, and Tosfos states, "De'im yeshlo mamon chayav." If a person has money, they have to use their financial resources to honor Hashem. Ve'im lav, and if a person does not have sufficient money, patur, then the person is exempt from doing things that are considered honoring Hashem. Ubekivad of ve'im, but regarding the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, ksiv, the Torah writes, kabedes avicha v'chulei. Point blank, honor your father and your mother. Dimashma, which implies bein yeshlo mamun bein einlo, whether or not you have the money or you don't have the money. The heicha deleisle, and in a case where you don't have the financial resources to properly take care and honor your parents, chayav lechazer al hapsachim then a person is obligated to go door to door collecting money, asking for charitable donations, lazun avi ve'imo, to supply the necessary things for his father and his mother. Ad kan Lashono. Here's a quote from the Tosfos. So we have quite a chiddush, quite a radical idea here, that when Tosfos says when it comes to honoring Hashem, if you don't have the money, that's the end of the story. But when it comes to honoring your parents, if you don't have the money, you can't stop there. You have to go collecting around to be able to get together the money to take care of your parents. Of course, you also have to take care of yourself and supply yourself and your family. So it's such a serious obligation, and that's why the Yerushalmi refers to honoring one's parents as chamura sheba chamuros, the strictest of the strict. And now that we've come to the point where we've explained all this, these two cases of shiluach hakein and kibbud aveim should not be considered like a situation in which the Torah taught something in two cases when it really didn't need to do so. Mitama achrina, from a whole new reason. As Zera Shimshon saying, we have a whole new way of explaining why you shouldn't view this as a case where the Torah didn't need to teach something in two cases, but went ahead and did it anyway. Because if the Torah would have taught the reward of long life only regarding sending away the mother bird, lo have osi kibbud aveim mineh, you actually could not have learned the mitzvah of honoring one's parents from that, meaning the reward of long life regarding honoring one's parents. You couldn't have learned that out. Dehavi amina, because I might have thought, shiny hosam, that is different. Sha'afilu l'taher hamitzora, even to purify a person with tzara, shehi mitzvah rabba, which is a great mitzvah, lo yitol, you can't take the mother bird. And that idea doesn't apply to honoring one's parents. Honoring one's parents does not take precedence over any mitzvah in the Torah. The Adarabba Amrinan b'Yavamas, just the opposite. We say in a Gemara in Yavamas, Ani Hashem. The Torah concludes the pasuk about honoring one's parents with I am Hashem. Malamed shekulchem chayovim b'chavodi, teaching that everyone is obligated to honor Hashem. Just as a person is, so too are one's parents obligated to honor Hashem. The im amar lo aviv hi tameh, and therefore, if a person's father says to him, and we're talking now about a Kohen, if a person who's a Kohen, his father says to him, hi tameh, you need to become tameh, you need to become expose yourself to tuma, to impurity, which is forbidden for a Kohen. Osha Amar Lo Al Tachazir, or a person's parent says to him, don't return this lost object, even though the halacha, according to the mitzvah, is to return a lost object. Lo Yishmalo, then a person doesn't listen, a child doesn't listen to the parents in those cases. When a parent tells a child not to do a mitzvah or to violate a mitzvah in the Torah, then the child is exempt from listening to his or her parents. And if the Torah had only written about the reward of long life regarding the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, lo have osi shiluach hakein mineh, you would not have been able to extend it to the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird. The shiny hosam, because kibbud aveim is different, it's unique. The itkush kvodam lichvod amakom v'odif mineh, because kibbud aveim is compared, and even in some cases is more stringent than honoring Hashem. Kenomar la'el, as we said before, brought down from the Tosfos. So that makes kibbud aveim unique. Umishum hachi, it's the richu tarvaihu, and therefore we need to have both of them. We need the Torah to state the reward of arichos yamim, of a long, good life, both by shiluach hakein, sending away the mother bird, and by kibbud aveim, and by honoring one's parents. And once that's done, then, as the Zera Shimshon explained at the core of this piece, that once that's done, we can expand it to all other mitzvos, as the Yerushalmi did, and as the Mishnah and Chulin did, to say the sachar, the reward of long life, applies to all observance of all mitzvos in the Torah. Yasher koach to everyone who joined in our learning of Zera Shimshon tonight, and we look forward again to learning together the part of Zera Shimshon, the parsha, God willing, next week.